Now here's a tough test. What is this?
Taking a look now. I see a dog in the image. It appears to be a fluffy, long-haired Chihuahua or similar small dog.
It's very specific.
The dog is sitting on what
very
looks
specific.
like a wooden or laminate floor.
That's exactly what she is, though, a long-haired Chihuahua.
That's exactly what she is, Jack says. That is a long-haired Chihuahua by the name of Marissa. So in this box is one of the very first Rabbit R1 AI smart devices. I am curious to try this out. I remember when it was announced, obviously I watched the keynote, I saw the different voice-based instructions and behaviors of the device, and I also saw industrial design, which in this case kind of has cool retro look to it, patch and a pin, very small. AI companion. One piece of dense foam and actually very cool packaging, quite futuristic. Wow, that orange is extremely vibrant. I mean, you almost feel like you do not want to throw this out. The speaker, the scroll wheel, the rabbit eye, very unique hardware. We have Type-C. See it booting up. What's fun about this is it does remind me of a different era in tech where everything wasn't a smartphone, where there were different devices that did different things and had different form factors. This wheel is not clicky, it's very smooth, but it has some weight to it. It has a little bit of resistance. All right, so it's asking for me to go to rabbit.tech in order to activate this device. I'm gonna go do that and we'll come back and start testing this thing out. All right, so I have the device booted up now, and it is important to note at this point that this is very early days. In fact, I think I'm in possession of the first unit at this point that I'm filming this. Even in the time that I've had this, it's had multiple updates. Things will change, and it's obviously part of a long and ongoing project in order to deliver the full breadth of what this technology will eventually be capable of. So the intended use here is voice. Essentially an assistant, give you responses to questions, utilize its built-in camera to identify things, and eventually figure out a way to integrate with a variety of different applications that you use on a regular basis. Some of the connections that exist at this point: DoorDash, Midjourney, Spotify, and Uber. I'll give you a quick example of how that works. Play Daft Punk on Spotify.
On it, I'll get the music going for you.
Now, obviously, I can't play too much of that for copyright reasons. Album artwork. So that's an example of an integration that currently exists, but you could imagine that expanding to a variety of other things. But let's just start out a little bit more simple and ask a couple of questions. Who are the Toronto Maple Leafs?
The Toronto Maple Leafs are a professional ice hockey team based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The team was established in 1917 and is one of the original 6 teams of the NHL.
Now, the next thing I'm gonna do is speak to the assistant without context in order to follow up on the previous question. Who is the best player?
The Toronto Maple Leafs have a rich history with many iconic players. According to the search results, some of the best players in the team's history include Dave Keon, Syl Apps, Ted Kennedy, Johnny Bower, Tim Horton, Boris Alming, Daryl Sittler. To determine the current best player, one would need to consider recent performance statistics, individual awards, and team success.
Pretty impressive. It's very detailed. Detailed to an extent that you're not really getting out of the existing assistant software that you probably have on your phone. This is not an assistant that's triggered via voice. Instead, it's all via this mechanical button. Now, to get into the interface, I shake, I end up with this menu, options for brightness, which I can hold and adjust in this manner. It's an interesting interface, and if you're familiar with Teenage Engineering designed products, it's kind of familiar. So if I want to change the volume of the voice, I hold and scroll. It's a 2-stage situation. I have it at max right now. You do actually have a screen-based input by flipping the device like this, and here you can see a keyboard that pops up. We flip it the other way and we snap back. The other cool thing there is the continual language, not having to reiterate the previous question, but being able to just build on it, like the 3 consecutive Toronto Maple Leafs questions, and it will remember it even right now. Who had the most goals this season?
The player who scored the most goals for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the current season is Austin Matthews. He has been a key goal scorer for the team and has consistently performed at a high level throughout the season.
Now you can actually clear the memory of the device by tapping this button 5 times. Now the other interesting thing that's on here is this camera, or what they're calling the eye. So if I double tap this button, I get vision that pops up, and I'm gonna bring over a couple of objects. This is a pretty easy one. What am I looking at?
You are looking at a Wilson NBA basketball. The basketball has the Wilson logo and branding prominently displayed on it, as well as the NBA logo, indicating that this is an official NBA basketball.
What am I looking at?
You are looking at a potted plant with green grass-like leaves in a gray pot on a wooden table. In the background, there is a person wearing a gray shirt and a desk setup with computer monitors.
It's the detail. It's actually almost like unexpected detail. I can even take some text that's on my phone, read this out loud.
Taking a look now, Frank Macaulay is deeply proud of his Italian roots. Macaulay established a home and business in Woodbridge, Ontario, a short drive from Toronto, and his commercial plumbing operation soon provided him with financial success, with equally desirable motorcycles.
I mean, it'll go on. Like, that is a relatively fast reading and conversion of an article on a phone. Now here's a tough test. What is this?
Taking a look now, I see a dog in the image. It appears to be a fluffy, long-haired Chihuahua, or similar small dog.
Very specific.
The dog is sitting on what
Very
looks
specific.
like a wooden or laminate floor.
Marissa, the long-haired Chihuahua, R1 was able to identify that. What should I do if I'm looking for a fun activity on a Saturday night in the Toronto area?
Fun activities to do on a Saturday night in the Toronto area include testing your limits at CN Tower's Edgewalk, enjoying a rooftop cocktail at the Drake Hotel, exploring the Scarborough Bluffs, singing karaoke at a bar, stopping to smell the flowers at Allen Gardens.
And speed is going to be key here in order to have widespread adoption. It's going to have to happen fast, feel comfortable, and casual. And that's sort of what that response was. Now, is there a way that I can follow up on that? I need to do something cheap, not expensive.
For budget-friendly options on a Saturday night in the Toronto area, you could consider having a picnic at Trinity Bellwoods Park, exploring the Distillery District, attending a free
Mo's just
concert
sitting over
or
there
event
nodding
at
right now.
Yonge Square,
Because
taking
you
a
see what I'm
stroll along
saying?
the harborfront.
You see what I'm saying? Some of these things are free. Mo didn't realize by moving his desk, now he's this guy. Now he's always available. Maybe that's what he was going for. Hey, those first few things sounded kind of expensive. Can you give me a cheap option? It went and found like 5 of them. It's very fun to experiment with. I know a lot of people are gonna have a lot of ideas and opinions, what kind of place it's gonna hold, because you have a phone, and this is kind of a different style of interaction, but a lot of the tasks end up being similar things to what you do on your phone, but just differently and more conversational. Now me, I'm an early adopter, so if I see this thing and I'm sort of willing to go on that ride and recognize that it's not going to be everything today that it can hopefully be eventually. But I personally was very, very excited about interfaces that are mostly voice-based and require less screen time, essentially. Less time where you're captivated by your display and more time that you're sort of looking around and interacting with the world. Voice presents that opportunity, and AI assistants are the way in which we get there. So those subtle differences in approach, the understanding of context, conversational component, that will be the key for my personal usage, and I think eventually widespread adoption. Now, the next way to sort of supercharge your assistant is via something called LAM, which is being integrated into this device. That's large action models, which is different than language models. This is the ability to sort of dictate an eventual action that your AI assistant will take. So this OS is powered by 2 types of AI models, large language models and large action models. The language model is responsible for understanding what you're saying, and then obviously the action model is responsible for the action that takes place. So that's sort of the ultimate AI experience, and I think it is the more difficult and ambitious aspect, is how do you go from having an assistant that is strictly language-based and towards actually executing tasks on your behalf. So I watched the keynote just like you did. I saw some of these activities like booking vacations and ordering food from DoorDash, and these are comprehensive tasks, and we can see a million ways in which these could be overly complex. And I do think that they will be difficult to implement, but they will be sort of beta or early phase, considering they represent this new type of AI interaction. So the other thing that came up in our discussions here at the studio is just like, why does this exist? Why do we have this bright orange square? Nice looking square and a cool unboxing experience, and it's pretty much anything teenage engineering goes near is beautiful to interact with. But why do we need something physical? Why do we have to have some physical hardware instead of just an application, say on a smartphone? It's hard to get people excited about something that's strictly software based. If you look at all the thumbnails and all the hype surrounding this particular device, this bright orange block has gotten people interested in a new method for interaction. What the hardware represents is an opportunity to get people excited in a new input method, which is no longer touch-based and no longer app-based. Is this thing still a relatively fringe tech experiment? Yes, in some ways, yes. But for those people that are early adopters like myself, or interested in trying new technology and possibly changing the way they interact, it could be an interesting and exciting piece of hardware. Now, the other thing worth talking about is price. There are some other devices that compete with this one that launched at much higher prices. They're coming in at $199, and sure, you can get a full-blown smartphone for $199. I don't think this fills the same space, targeted at people who want to play with something new and enjoy the idea of experimenting with a new platform, with a new interface, after however many years we've spent with kind of a singular approach to computing, which is the touchscreen-based smartphone. I think anybody who's interested in purchasing this already has a smartphone and understands to a certain extent what they're getting into. An early step towards our eventual computing future. You have to admit it's pretty. You have to admit.